What's going on, YouTube? JT Jaborn here, and welcome back to another edition of my DC comic book reviews. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about Teen Titans Academy number 7. This one's written by Tim Sheridan, and it picks up after the events of issue number 6, which I talked about, was it last month or September? I feel like this is coming out a little bit late. I think a lot of the DC titles got delayed, and I kind of forgot a bit what happened, so I had to kind of quickly look through and refresh. But I realized, oh yeah, the last issue was the start of this whole story arc with Gorilla Grodd and his nephew, Gorilla Gregg. And this story arc ended in just 2 issues. So we're kind of seeing a consistent pattern here of story arcs that really should take at least more than 2 issues, get kind of rushed through, and so we can quickly move on to something else. I still have issues with Teen Titans Academy. I like this issue in particular. This story arc really could have been stretched out at least another issue or 2. I feel like it's pretty rushed, all things considered, and it's just like, I would like to spend time hopefully getting to know some of the new characters some more. We got a little bit more with Greg this time around, and that's probably why I thought this is one of the stronger issues in this run, is we just kind of spent more time focusing on a smaller batch of characters. But unfortunately, the story arc surrounding it just was quickly rushed in a 2-issue thing. When you have so many characters in this book, which we have Teen Titans Academy, and you've only gone through, what, like 7 or 8 issues if you count that yearbook special, every story arc just feels like we're just rushing through it as fast as we can. We have so many things going on in this book in general. No Red X this time around, which thankfully, because Red X has felt kind of like a distraction throughout this book, because they're really just not leading to any big reveals as of right now. We're what, like 8 or 9 issues in terms of this storyline. We still haven't gotten to the identity of who Red X is. I don't know how much longer they're going to drag this thing on, or maybe they'll never reveal who Red X is. I don't even know. I don't even know what direction this book is really going in at this point. Yeah, we've seen some stuff with Future State, but Future State's pretty much being changed from this point forward, so it's going to go in a bit of a different direction. Some things will remain the same, but there's definitely going to be some sort of changes going on. So yeah, let's quickly summarize what happens this time around. Basically, if you remember the last issue, a lot of the Teen Titans Academy members were captured by Gorilla Grodd, and they're mind controlling everyone. The Teen Titans Academy students feel like Gorilla Gregg has betrayed them, and you have all these other characters whose names I mostly forget, because quite frankly, a lot of them don't really stand out. You also have Stitch in there, probably the one character who's stood out the most, mostly because Stitch has had more focus than a lot of the others. And some of them think that Greg has betrayed them. Greg really hasn't. There's a bit of a storyline going on between Gorilla Grodd and Greg and a bit of their history. Grodd, who's one of my favorite Flash villains, which is probably why I like this issue more than a lot of the other ones, because we got something focused on Grodd, and I think Grodd is a really fascinating character. I love the whole concept of Gorilla City and this whole other world that's just gorillas and like using his psychic abilities and stuff. I always liked Grodd, especially in the Justice League cartoon. He was one of my favorite Flash villains, and hopefully one day we can get him in a Flash movie at some point. I think that'd be really cool, especially with a lot of the VFX that they can do as seen in the Planet of the Apes film. So Grodd could be kind of a cool villain. So when you're focusing on Grodd and Greg, I think the issue's at its strongest. When you try to bring in some of the other characters and you try and rush through this whole story, it doesn't leave you really satisfied by the end of it. I would have actually liked if this thing went on for a couple of more issues. Take your time with it. The pacing in some of these storylines is just so brisk and so quick, to the point where I don't really feel like I'm having time to really let the story breathe, because as soon as you're ready to focus on a smaller group of characters, it quickly rushes to something else, because they have like 800 characters to shove into this book. And it's just going to be a consistent problem with Teen Titans Academy. It makes me wish that they really started with a much smaller batch of characters before really moving on to something else. I think that would have been really beneficial to the book. So we're focused on Greg here. He eventually is able to outwit his uncle and save the day. And then he gets a talk from Beast Boy, who then gives him some ice cream, and then he writes a note to Grodd and gets him some ice cream. And that's kind of where the issue ends, because in the last issue there was something about ice cream going on there, and that's pretty much it. Any complaints? Yeah, there's still a bit of that cringy bit dialogue, like from Beast Boy, where he's talking about, I was going to say an asshole, but if you want to get derogatory, sure, because Greg calls somebody a beast, and Beast Boy is no longer going by that. He's going by Changeling, or whatever he's going to be. I don't know. He's been Beast Boy this whole time, and all of a sudden he's like, oh, the term's derogatory and all that. You're still going to have some of that cringiness sprinkled in throughout this book. Not as bad as the previous issues. I think the reason I like this issue more than a lot of the other ones is it just focused primarily on Grodd and Gregg. If we would have gotten me at least another issue of this, we could have had something more, but they rushed through the storyline, and ultimately by the end of it, I'm wondering what ultimately was the purpose of the storyline. Was it to kind of get Gregg over more as a character? In which case, it somewhat did the job, but it really would have been more beneficial if we had a much longer story arc, because these quick 2-issue story arc things with the characters, there's no time to breathe, there's no time to really let the story digest, and I don't really feel like I'm immersing myself as much into it since they're kind of rushing, because at first they're just like, oh, we're going to go on vacation, and we still have these 800 characters who use names you don't really remember, unless you're really kind of religiously like reading through this time and time again. I don't really feel like a lot of the characters in this book, quite frankly, stand out. So yeah, and still no role for a lot of the former teammates that were with Damien's team, so they're just kind of forgotten about. Crush is obviously off doing her own solo thing. I'm not sure what role Wallace is doing. I'm not sure if Emiko has even a part in this book at all. It's primarily just focused on the all-new Teen Titans Academy students, which makes me wish that we would have just had a separate Teen Titans book focusing on the previous team and just kind of seeing them maybe hopefully learn to grow. At least that book focused on a smaller batch of characters. And here it's just, there's just too many. I still don't feel like I know any of these characters. We'll get like an issue or two, and then a month or two passes by and I kind of forget because so many of them leave such a little impact. But all things considered, is this really a terrible issue? I don't really think so. I think this issue is fine, all things considered. There's still a bit of that cringiness towards the end, but the fact that it focused on Gorilla Grodd and the relationship between him and his nephew Gregg, I thought we had something more here than the other storylines that are going on in this book, and I just wish it would have went on maybe a issue or two longer instead of just breezing through it. And by the end of it, Grodd, who was captured, is just kind of out broken free and I guess eating ice cream at this point. So yeah, man, we could have had something with this one. I felt like this one had a stronger focus than some of the others, and it would have been more beneficial if we had a longer storyline. So, but this is Teen Titans Academy, which means we got to quickly rush through every storyline and then throw in more stuff with Red X and focus on 800 characters and yada yada yada. But all things considered, this really isn't a bad issue, all things considered. Oh, I just kind of repeated myself, sorry. But yeah, this really isn't a terrible issue by any means. I just think it would have been stronger if we had more of a longer term story arc and didn't just quickly end this thing here, because Grodd is, again, one of my favorite Flash villains, and seeing him at the forefront of this thing was kind of cool. We were close. Could have benefited from another issue or two with Grodd, but what are you gonna do? Anyways, if you read Teen Titans Academy number 7, what are your thoughts on it? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Is anybody still watching these videos? I don't really know, because I felt like when I was covering the previous book, I had quite a bit of I had a lot more frequent interactions, but I feel like Teen Titans Academy, a lot of people have maybe dropped off from the book, so I don't quite know if anybody's really kind of following along in the storyline, but maybe you are. So if you're following along in it, what are your thoughts? Just let me know in the comment section down below. And yeah, I've kind of been rambling along way too long and incoherently for this amount of time, so I'm gonna wrap this thing up here before I just continue to ramble. I don't know, it's whatever at this point. It's Teen Titans Academy, so you either like it or you really dislike it, or you're just kind of meh to it. So yeah. All right, well, that's all I got to say. As always, be sure to like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the YouTube channel for more content. Be sure to come back next time as we will continue covering some more DC comic books. And as always, take care now. Bye-bye then, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace. Oh, and the artwork is pretty decent too. Forgot to mention that. All right, bye-bye.